I've reviewed and even used several Anki decks for the MCAT, but this one right here that I'm about to show you is by far the best. It is the most complete and it is the most concise. It's going to be superior to any pre-made or self-made deck that I've seen so far. I'm talking about the AnKing plus IFD MCAT deck. Now, either one of those decks may sound familiar to you, but I'm going to show you what it looks like when they're rolled into one. And most importantly, I'm going to show you how to use them. So when you're looking at using this deck, and it's going to be the first link in the description, the first thing that you're going to be curious about is what the heck is the AnKing MCAT deck? The AnKing MCAT deck is a pre-made flashcard deck that's going to cover all the sciences that can be tested on the MCAT. And you can be sure that it's going to be thorough because the AnKing deck is actually made up of several decks that have been thrown together, and those decks cover Khan Academy, the Kaplan books, and even Pixorize, which is kind of like a memory palace third-party site that helps you to remember some of the sciences of the MCAT. Now, like I said in the intro, this deck is going to be the most complete. No, it's not the shortest or the longest deck out there, but it's going to be the most complete and thorough, and it's going to trim down some of the fat. And so let's jump into the computer, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what this deck looks like. This is the AnKing MCAT deck. When you expand it, especially if you've got the one that we have in the description, you'll have all of these decks, but you can see that it's pretty comprehensive. But where this deck originally comes from is from this Reddit post right here. And to get to this Reddit post, you can just Google something generic like AnKing MCAT deck download Reddit, and it'll take you straight to this post. Now, it's a really good idea to go ahead and read this whole post, especially if you have a deck that is contained within the AnKing deck, like the MileDown deck or something like that, and you want to make sure that you don't undo the work that you've already done. That is what is called, quote unquote, protecting your scheduling. You know, making sure that you don't have notes and cards that you've already done that this is going to make you redo. If you don't want to have to do that, you've already done a little bit of work, then you want to, quote, protect your scheduling. So it's a good idea to read this post, and if you want just the AnKing deck, not with the IFD deck added into it, like we'll have in our description, then you can go on this post and click right here, this deck with media, this Google Drive link. So that's the best place to find it, is going to be on Reddit. But let's go back and look a little bit more in depth at this deck and what makes it up. So to do that, we'll click Browse, and that'll take us to the Browse section, which you're going to be pretty intimately familiar with. But most of what you're going to be doing, even though here all these are your flashcards, just in a different view. This is going to be the front of your flashcard. What's in these brackets is what is the fill in the blank. So that's kind of what the close A function is. So once you get to this screen, you look over on the left side of the screen, it'll have AnKing MCAT underneath decks. You can expand that. You can see where I've added this IFD High Yield Deck in there. Now, the cool thing about the AnKing deck, if we're looking at it, is that it has a lot of organization and structure. And so we'll be in decks a little bit later when we come back and talk about how to actually use this. But first, let's go and look at tags. And in these tags, which is mainly where you're going to be in for the duration of your studying, if you expand the sections as AK, which is AnKing MCAT V2, then you'll be able to see the different organization. So the AnKing deck actually has all their cards separated by Kaplan book and chapter, which is awesome. They also have it separated by Khan Academy section, subsection, and occasionally direct video, which is awesome. And then if you're a Pixorize type of person, then they have it separated by, I guess, Pixorize video and section. So that's really great too, so that you know exactly what you can study, make sure it correlates with what you have actually done so far. And they also have this MileDown tag here, which is just the original MileDown setup. But honestly, if you're going about it the way that I'm going to suggest, then you won't really deal too much with this MileDown setup, besides perhaps the all MCAT equations block. So that's the AnKing deck. In this video, what we've done is we've taken the IFD High Yield Guide deck and we've merged it into the AnKing Deck. So it's essentially both of them into one. And so that kind of begs the question, what is the IFD High Yield Guide Deck? The IFD High Yield Deck is a deck that only covers the high yield sciences, and the purpose of it was to be as short as possible and cover all the important buzzwords and high yield concepts that you might be tested on test day. It lines up perfectly with the high yield guide that we wrote, and that means it's not going to cover every single science that's on the MCAT, but it's going to cover the ones that are tested more frequently. So it's perfect if you want to start your study out with this deck so that you make sure that you know all the sciences that are most likely to be tested, or if you want to finish your study out, or even both, which is probably what I would recommend doing. So we've taken that high yield deck, we've merged it with this AnKing deck, but before I go and show you how to use it, which I'm about to, it's probably best that I introduce myself so that you can kind of get a feeling for what is possibly in this high yield deck and whether or not it makes sense to even follow the advice that I'm giving you.
My name is John, and I work with my sister and co-tutor Maggie. We're both medical students with different MCAT experiences, but pretty similar results. I took the exam 3 times, and I even shelled out $4,000 on a full MCAT program, and the whole time I could not get the score that I wanted. Through over a year of trial and error, which was really trial and failure, I took what I had learned from others and I synthesized them into the strategies that we share on this channel. This led to me scoring in the 90th percentile on my very next MCAT exam. And then I tutored Maggie using these strategies, and she just absorbed them, helped me fine-tune them, and ended up scoring in the 100th percentile on her very first try. After that, we've been tutoring this exam for years, and we're pretty firm believers that most of a student's success on the MCAT comes from having a deep understanding of the high-yield sciences and an applicable knowledge of the strategies. This high-yield guide is a complete overhaul of what we think are the high-yield sciences, explained and taught specifically for the MCAT. If you want a book that will be as thorough as your school textbooks, then keep moving. But if you want a book that is just shy of 100 pages, including illustrations, and trims the fat and only tells you what you have to know about these high-yield sciences, explained in a way that is understandable and how the MCAT tests them, then this is the ebook that you're missing. And if you don't like to read, then don't worry, we're making video teachings for each of these chapters in the book, and we're posting them onto YouTube as we can. If you go check out our channel, you can see that some of them are already up.
So now that you have a good understanding of kind of what the decks are, the AnKing Deck and the IFD High Yield Deck and this baby that they've made that we have as the first link in the description, it's time to talk about how to use them, how to go get that 515, that 520 that you're watching this video hoping to get. Also, it's important to note, you don't have to be aiming for a 515 to use Anki, okay? I've had plenty of students that just wanted a 508 and they used Anki, and some of them exceeded that goal, but some of them hit it right on the head, and they're gonna be doctors just like those that are hitting a 520. So it's important to keep that in mind. Anki is probably going to be the way that you're going to study for medical school, and it's a great way to train your brain to quickly recall facts so that even once you get past step, you're still going to get, it's called pimped on questions whenever you're on your clinical rounds. And what that means is attendings are going to come up and they're going to ask you some random obscure fact, and your whole job as the medical student or even the resident is to answer that question correctly. It's very stressful, but if you've trained your brain to kind of think in this flashcard format, it's not nearly as bad. So that's one reason why I think that everybody can benefit from something like Anki. So let's talk about how to use them. The first thing that's first is you've got to download Anki, you've got to get your settings and the add-ons set up correctly. Now this has been covered in several videos, and I'm not going to make you watch, 45-minute video on me covering stuff that can be covered by somebody else better. So the video that you're seeing on the screen right now is a little clippet of the AnKing himself explaining proper Anki settings. The AnKing, I believe he's a dermatology resident right now, but he kind of built this massive empire around sharing resources for originally medical school, but he quickly moved into the MCAT as well. So go watch his video. It'll be a link in the description to get your settings and the add-ons set up appropriately. And really and truly, that is the headache. That's the entry barrier. Once you get Anki set up, and it seriously might take you a few hours to get it set up and get comfortable with it. Once you get it set up, oh my goodness, it makes studying so much easier, because whenever you wake up in the morning, you don't say, I have to study for the MCAT. You say, I have to do steps 1, 2, and 3. I have to review my Anki, I have to watch these 3 videos, and then I have to do the new Anki cards for that, and then I'm done for the day. So it takes a lot of the stress out of it, because having a system and a process that you're going to follow makes your plan and your schedule for you. So now that you know where to find the resources to get your settings matched up perfectly, let's jump back into the computer and talk about how to learn the sciences that are included in the AnKing plus IFD MCAT deck.
With everything set up the way that we like it, as far as settings and add-ons go, now it's time to actually talk about using this deck. So the first thing that we're going to do is go to Browse, and then over here on the left-hand side where it says Decks, we're going to click AnKing MCAT, and that's going to select all of them. You'll know it's all of them because it'll be just shy of 6,000 cards total, 5920. Click any card in here, and then you're going to select all of them. On a Mac, the hotkey is Command A, and it'll take a minute, but it'll select all of them because you'll see them highlighted, and then you want to suspend all of them. And so on a Mac, the hotkey for that is Command J. On a Windows, it's probably something like Control J. I'm not really sure. And so what that has done is it has suspended all of these cards. So everything is suspended, and we've kind of reviewed the next thing, which is the general structure, which is that we're going to first complete the previous day's reviews. Then we're going to watch a video or read a chapter to learn the content. Then we're going to unsuspend those cards and then repeat. So to talk about and to show you what reviewing cards would look like, I'm going to have to go to my medical school AnKing Deck, and you'll see I've already done some of my reviews today, 205. But the first thing that you would do whenever you woke up or whenever you sat down to study is you would begin studying, and you would just go ahead and finish out all of these review cards, however long it took you, until you got down to 0. Now, after that, then you can begin to learn new cards, but make sure that you knock out your review cards first because it is the most important part of this whole process. Now, when it comes time to learn new cards, that's going to look a little bit different depending on which resource you're using. So I'll show you quickly for all 3 resources what that would look like. Let's say that you wanted to learn via the Kaplan books. So what you would do is after you'd hit all your reviews for the previous day, you would go and let's say that you wanted to learn about amino acids. Well, you would open up your biochemistry book and you would read chapter 1 about amino acids, and you would do your best to understand the big picture concepts. You may not have to memorize all the small nuances like the specific pKa's of side chains the first time you read it, because Anki is designed to help you remember those small nuances. But you would need to remember the big picture concepts, like the fact that there are different chemical structures and that impacts how these amino acids react within a protein and with other proteins and things of that nature. So you would read that whole chapter, and then after you read and tried your best to understand the chapter, you would come here, click amino acids, peptides, proteins, click any of the cards in here, and then select them all with Command A, and then unsuspend them all with Command J. Okay, now that's going to show now as having new cards to review. Now I haven't changed the settings on here, and that's why it's 19. It's because it comes preloaded at 20 new cards per day, but you would technically have 102 new cards to review that day. So once you have unsuspended all these cards, then you'll come here and you will just hit your reviews and learn all these for the day. So that's it for the Kaplan approach. Let's say that you prefer Khan Academy because it's videos and it's free and it's a really great resource. So first what you would do is you would go and you would watch a specific video. And so I'm already on Khan Academy's MCAT section here. And you scroll down and we've already done amino acids. So let's look at enzyme structure and function. So we'll watch all these videos about enzymes, take the little practice question at the end because that'll allow us to make sure that what we know kind of fits, and then we can come over to Khan Academy. Enzymes would be a biochemistry section. So we could watch that enzyme section, and it would probably be a good idea to just run through all of enzymes, so structure, function, and kinetics, and then go through here, unsuspend all of these cards with, again, Command A, selecting all of them, Command J, unsuspending them, and then we would end up doing all of those cards too. Same thing would be true for Pixorize if that's how you wanted to do it. And the really cool thing about these Khan Academy flashcards is that there are links to almost every single video that you would need. So let's say that in 3 months you don't really understand why this would be considered a nonpolar aliphatic group. You can click that link and it'll take you straight to the video wherever they taught that subject, which is a pretty cool perk inside of this. So if you forgot it, then you just watch this video again and let it kind of remind you, or you could even read the transcript, which is probably going to be a little dull, a little difficult to piece through, but hey, it's there. Now, an important part for all Anki cards is that there's going to be stuff here underneath, and that's called extras. And it's really important that you read these, because oftentimes these are like difficult questions that are asked and you have to know those facts still. So just because something's not in the top of the card does not mean that you can skip on it. Reading this stuff is equally as important, and that'll be for every deck from here on out. If you don't see these like little blue lines and pop-ups, that's normal. I have a add-on that I pay for called Amboss that allows me to do that. So you're welcome to check that out if you would like, but they're not like a sponsor or anything. I just wanted to explain why mine might look a little different than yours. Now you might notice, hey, I thought we unsuspended amino acids in the Kaplan chapters, and this has a Khan Academy link to it. Well, that's actually kind of the beauty of this AnKing deck. It's one reason that I'm so high on it, is that a lot of the cards that are in the Kaplan books and the Khan Academy videos kind of overlap, and the AnKing deck does a good job of making sure that all of those resources are in sync with each other, so that you're not having to do several cards over and over, and there's not a ton of useless repetition. Now, last but not least, let's say that you want to learn from the IFD High Yield Guide. And so acids and bases are our first chapter on this book. So let's say that what you would end up doing is you would read through this book and this whole chapter and make sure that you've got it down pat, that you understand it. And then you would come here and you would unsuspend these cards with, again, Command A, select all, Command J, and then you would go back through and you would learn all of these. Now, we do have extra stuff in here, stuff that I felt was important enough to put in here that you might see on your test, but a really cool feature about what we've done with the IFD High Yield deck is that because we are lecturing through all of these chapters, we've done our best to include a link to each of those lecture videos within the flashcard themselves. Now, we have not lectured through all of these chapters. We have not even lectured through most of these chapters. So that means we will have to update this deck pretty frequently. But to access that link, you just go to additional resources and the link will pop up. So you click that and it'll take you straight to the video after you watch a nice ad about a Whitney Houston movie, apparently. So you skip it, and there's Maggie's face explaining to us about acid-base chemistry. Now, it's important. We are going to be updating this again, so it's a good idea for you to either pin this video somehow so that you can check back for the updated link, or for you to, it's best to probably just go ahead and join the Discord channel, because we'll be throwing out more frequent updates within the Discord channel as we release more videos to this. But regardless of the resource that you use, the process is going to be pretty similar. You're going to start out every day with reviewing the old cards that you have, the ones that pop up automatically for you. Then you're going to move to learning the new topics. And some of you might want to maybe read the IFD guide and the Kaplan book and watch the Khan Academy video for it for one specific topic, and that's completely fine. Just make sure that you check each of these tags for additional cards, because some of us think certain things are important that the others don't. So make sure that you get all of them unlocked. And then once you've watched the video, you unlock the cards, then you go ahead and learn those cards. And then you just pretty much repeat for the next topic until you're done for the day.
So now you know how to study, and you've kind of seen this general structure of knocking out your reviews and then learning the new sciences and making sure you're really conceptualizing those sciences, and then going and adding your new cards, reviewing those, and then kind of rinse and repeat. But I really just want to give you a word of advice for now, as well as in the future in medical school. The most important part about your study day every single day is to review the cards that you've learned. Now, this will probably be pretty easy for you whenever you've only got 60 or 80 or maybe even 200 cards to review, but they'll eventually start stacking up. And while you're studying for the MCAT, they won't probably get over, a few hundred, but still that takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. And you're going to feel like you're wasting time sometimes, because you're going to go 50 cards and you're going to be like, oh, I know all of this. Why am I spending 30 minutes studying all of this that I already know whenever there's so much material out there that I don't know? You're going to kind of feel a little bit of anxiety about that. But trust me, it is the most important part. It's the least sexy part because you're just reviewing stuff that you've already learned, but it is the most important part. And it's what separates the really high scoring students from the people that can't even get into medical school. And that sounds kind of harsh. And there are good reasons to not do your Anki cards, and I'm not talking about those exceptions, but for the most part, if you're not doing your Anki cards, it's because you're not willing to put in the effort that it takes to do those cards. And you might think that there's nobody out there that's doing their cards, on Saturdays or the day that they finish a test, going home and doing 400 cards, or that maybe even the night before a test, or maybe even Christmas Day. You might think that there's nobody out there doing those cards, but I assure you, I am. And I know I joke a lot on this channel, and I want to talk a little bit more seriously about this. You are preparing and training to have a very, very impactful and serious job. The things that you're learning today are relevant to either directly what you're going to be doing for patient care, or they're relevant because they give you the foundation to understand things that are going to impact your patient care, whether that be pharmacology, if you're thinking medicine, or maybe you're thinking surgery. Well, guess what? You still got to know all the medicine and the pharmacology, but it's also very important that you understand complex problem solving and that you understand some basic principles, even physics principles like leverage. And not only that, you're not going to be a surgeon if you're not willing to do this work. So think about the type of person that you want to be, the type of doctor that you want to be, and work as hard as that person will. Do the things that that person will do, and then you are that person. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't take care of yourself, because you should, and again, there are legitimate excuses for taking days, weeks, months, years off of studying and realigning your focuses on other things. But if this is the path and the career that you're set out for, I'm telling you, there are some dogs on this path. And I have already met several that are light years smarter than me. But I know that, and I've realized that these people are smarter than me. I'm not smart enough to do it on my own. I'm not smart enough to do it without help. I'm not smart enough to do it without putting in extra effort. And that's why it took me 4 stinking tries to do well on this test, because I was trying to lean back on this natural intelligence I had, and it just wasn't enough. I've seen what can happen whenever somebody does it right the first try. I've seen it with close to 100 students. You can even look at Maggie as an example. She did it right the first try and made 100th percentile on her test. And she's crushing medical school as well. And I'm doing really well too, because I'm taking these principles and I'm just showing up every single day. And I'm not good every single day, but you know what? I show up and I do the work, and that's all you have to do. You don't have to have a great study day every single day. You just have to show up, and you just have to push. You just have to move it just a little bit. There's a great book called The War of Art, and it's all about getting into this mindset of treating your kind of creative endeavors as a job and becoming a professional and overcoming something called the resistance. And when I read the book, it applied perfectly to studying for me. Because to be a great student, which is pretty close in line with being a great doctor, or at least being a knowledgeable doctor, you don't have to be the smartest person in the world. You honestly don't have to be the person that can work for 48 hours straight because you're cramming Adderall in an unhealthy lifestyle. But you do have to be the person that shows up every single day, because there will be a day whenever somebody that I love is going to go through a difficult period in their life, and they're going to have to call a doctor. And whether the call is because they think they're having a heart attack, or because they think that they're having, maybe a stroke or cancer or something like that, I want the person on the other end of the phone to know as much as possible. I want them to have taken every ounce of their education as a privilege and seriously. And that doesn't mean you have to be happy about every single day, because honestly, I don't like what I do most days. I'm proud of what I've accomplished at the end of the day, but who likes to sit here and study for 60 hours a week? It's fun for 20 or 30, and then at the end of the day, you're just like, I don't care about macrophages. So one day you're gonna get the call from one of my family members, and I want you to be as prepared as possible to take care of them. And I also think that that is the way to a satisfactory life for you. But I also want you to know that whenever you or somebody that you love or care calls, and on the other side of the phone is me, I'm going to be ready. You don't have to worry. I will have worked hard every single day to make sure that I can take care of your loved one. I don't like doing Anki. I don't like studying for tests. I don't really love taking tests, even though it's probably the most fun part, but I'm going to be ready because I am going to do Anki. I am going to study for my test. I am going to score high on them. I am going to show up early for my rotations. I am going to stay late. I am going to practice suturing whenever my wife and my future kids fall asleep. I am going to do those things. So whenever you call me, you're gonna get the best care that you possibly can. And I'm not saying that Anki is going to do that, but I am saying the mindset that you develop doing this, doing something hard, is going to be what allows you to click into that mindset. This is serious. You are not training to be able to recite the amino acids. You are training your mind and your brain to be something impressive, to be fortified, to be able to handle those calls when I call you in the middle of the night. I need you there to answer the phone, and I need you there to be knowledgeable and reliable. And I know you can do it, but it starts today. Now, I'm not normally this serious. If you've seen any videos on the channel, you know that I make a ton of jokes about like Ryan Reynolds being handsome, and he is. So I usually don't talk about more serious subjects like this, like your mindset or your mentality, but because I've seen so many people fall off with Anki and just get in this perpetual cycle of like, I'm motivated, so I'm gonna do Anki for a month, and I'm gonna study really hard for the MCAT for a month, and then it's hard, you know, it's pressing back, and so I'm gonna fall off. And they get in this cycle, and they'll do this for years. And next thing you know, you're 5 years older than you wanted to be. You're no closer to being in medical school. And the worst part about it is that you feel guilty at yourself because you know that you gave up when it got hard. And I have a saying, it's really easy to study when it's easy to study. But when it gets difficult, that is the separation. That's what separates a doctor from a previous pre-med that just has a biology degree and isn't very fulfilled in what they're doing because they wanted to be a doctor. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that kind of like a look into my mindset was a little bit helpful, and I really hope that this combination of these two decks is going to be great. I think that this is probably going to be the best way to review for the MCAT. I'll probably recommend this to students for the foreseeable future. You know, you've got to learn your content, and I think that this is the best and most efficient way to do it. It's going to allow you to remember it whenever you take your test, and even on into that whenever you get into medical school, because a lot of this stuff comes back up. Make sure to check out the description below so that you can see the links to things like the AnKing Deck that we've talked this whole video about. You can just click that Google Drive link and download it. Or this high yield guide that we've been talking about that Maggie and I wrote this summer. We'll have the link to that. I guess we'll have the link to our MCAT math guide document too, in case you struggle with math, there's that. And then also we'll have a link to our Discord channel. So if you want to study with us, if you just want to chat, then make sure to join this channel. I try to answer as many questions as I can, and Maggie does the same thing. We are both in school, but the cool thing is that sometimes before I can even get to an answer, another student has answered that question. So it's a great place to get encouragement, to get feedback, you know, and also hopefully it'll be a good place for us to eventually allow students to kind of talk about the tricks of the trade at separate medical schools. So like the video, subscribe to the channel. We will eventually be moving off of the MCAT into more like medical school related topics because that's where we are in life. But until the MCAT is finished, we're gonna stay here. Thanks for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.